Welcome. Once again, we find ourselves out at the Invictus Games Toronto office. I'm sitting here with the CEO for the Games, Michael Burns. Thank you so much for your time, Michael.
It's great to be here.
You know, you take a look at what you've been involved with over the years. We're going to talk about how you got involved with the True Patriot Love Foundation. We're going to talk about Michael Guerin Hospital later. But I want you to focus first. 2016, you're funding now a study. I want you to tell more about that.
Yeah, we thought it was important as we prepare to deliver these historic games to Canada in September that for the benefit of not just our organizing committee, but all of those who are investing in the games, that we have a way of demonstrating that the Invictus Games is actually really delivering on its key objective, which is transforming lives, the lives of the competitors who are going to be here in Toronto, not just from Canada, but from 16 other nations, as well as the families and the friends who will be joining them. And so we decided to take it upon ourselves to fund an independent research study, which will be conducted by a professor here in Canada doing her postdoctoral work at Dalhousie University, to examine the impact that the Invictus Games and adaptive sport has on the competitors as well as their family and friends. And in fact, it won't just start here in Toronto. This particular researcher was with us in Orlando over a year ago, tracking the competitors and the family and friends through that experience. And also watching and monitoring them over the course of the year as they prepare to now go to Toronto. And our hope is that on the eve of the Games, we'll release the preliminary findings of that research report. And I think what it's going to tell us is we all know anecdotally that adaptive sport can be very positive, both to the physical and the mental outlook that men and women who compete in these sports have. But it'd be really good to have the data that supports that thinking. And I think what you'll find is that it will likely underscore a lot of the things that we're saying. But at the same time, if we're going to go forward and host events like this for this kind of community, let's make sure that that we're doing it right, that we're creating a positive experience, and that so when the Games go to Sydney in 18 and then back to the UK in 19, that those organizing committees can benefit from the research that's coming out of this study.
Well, I know one thing about the Invictus Games. I was looking at some research today, and it's actually the largest competition in regards to injured and ill soldiers. There's going to be hundreds of them there. I just want you to quickly focus on some of the nations that are going to be coming over here to Canada.
Yeah, we have 16 nations that will be coming to Toronto in 2017. We've got them. They're coming as far away as Afghanistan, Iraq. We have Jordan attending the Games, Australia, New Zealand, the Italians, the French, the Brits, and the Americans, and several others. And obviously, the makeup of each team is different in terms of both the size as well as the complexity of the injuries. But at the end of the day, these are all men and women who have served their country, and as a result of that service, are either dealing with physical or mental health issues that they're trying to get through. And what is common again with all of these competitors is the impact that their service has had on the lives of their family members and their friends. And that's why the narrative for our Games is to ensure that it's not just the soldier or the veteran who's competing in these Games, but that they're accompanied by members of their families or friends to join them. Because we really believe that if you're going to help heal and you're going to be able to recover from those injuries that you sustained when you were serving, that it has to include the family unit. Because as many people know, often it's the family that bears the largest brunt of military life, and the challenges that they face are quite unique from average Canadian families.
I know that you're co-founder of the True Patriot Love Foundation. At the same time, there was an award given to top 40, under 40. I think it was 2010, 2012. You received the highest award that a civilian could receive from the Chief of Defense Staff at that time. I want you to talk about a little bit about the True Patriot Love Foundation, what got you involved in co-founding that, and then go over to the award that you received from the Chief of Defense Staff.
Yeah, we started True Patriot Love back in 2009, but we really began to prepare for 2009 shortly after a good friend of mine, his son was killed in Afghanistan. And for me personally, that was the motivation to want to help our military families. And with the help of a number of great friends, other volunteers, as well as a great collection of corporate supporters, we hosted our first True Patriot Love Gala in November of 2009. Ironically, as we were leading up to that event, we didn't have any, defined plans that we were going to have this permanent foundation that was going to live on beyond the event. But we quickly realized as we got closer to that event that the momentum that was building, the support that we were receiving was something that none of us had really been involved with before. And it only made sense given the success that we had that night, where we raised in one evening more than $2 million, that this wasn't going to be one time, but this was going to be a lifetime commitment. And establishing a permanent foundation seemed like the logical thing to do, so that we would be around, for the foreseeable future, not only promoting the unique challenges our military families face, but also raising support to fund great programs across the country that are helping our men and women in uniform, our veterans, and their families.
Well, we also have to remember that award you received in 2012. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's you never go into these things expecting to receive, awards or accolades. Our intent was and has always been, how can we help others, and in this case our military families, where we really believed, even though governments at many levels are doing a lot for our servicemen and women, just like hospitals, just like universities, there are gaps. And as private citizens, I think we have a responsibility to step up where there are gaps, where there is an opportunity to lend additional support and do what we can. And I think the award really is a recognition, not of my contributions, but our contributions as a group that was, has committed and dedicated a lot of our time to supporting these families. So I think more than anything, it's a recognition of a tremendous number of volunteers who, without getting their fair due, deserve most of the credit for helping our families.
You're also the chair you got 2 weeks left as the chair of the Michael Guerin Hospital. I know you raised $50 million for a donation, which used to be the largest in Canada. You're going to share quickly how it's now been matched and somewhere else. And you helped raise an additional $60 million to help with redevelopment. Yeah,
I mean, my experience at the hospital has been really an incredible experience for me personally, and to work with an amazing medical staff there, as well as other volunteers, has been pretty exciting. I know when I arrived there almost 12 years ago, it was a hospital that was struggling to really differentiate itself in a very crowded market, particularly here in Toronto, when you're competing for donor money and corporate support from the likes of titans like Sick Kids and Princess Margaret and others. But we found our way. We had a clear plan and objective, and we said that we've got an incredible story to tell here. Let's focus on what we're great at, and let's not focus on what we can't do. And I think when you are as a volunteer and certainly as chair, you're really becoming an evangelist for an institution, and people want to back a winner. And when your volunteer core that's out there really is your front end sales and marketing has got that confidence and that swagger, it's amazing who you convince to get behind you. And we serve one of the most neediest communities in the country. We probably, I think, are recognized as providing great patient care to maybe one of the most diverse communities in the world, not just Canada. And so for us to have been able to nurture and to cultivate the Guerin gift, from the original contribution that they made several years ago of $250,000 to turn that into a $50 million gift is a real testament to the men and women that work at the hospital. And as I often sort of joke about, I said, they didn't give us the money because we sucked. They gave us the money because they believe in what we're doing. And I think, again, it's a testament to everybody that works there. And, we were thrilled to be able to do that. They're a lovely couple. You won't meet two finer people, an incredible family. And then to be able to rename the hospital in recognition of their late son, who was born there but died of a rare form of cancer at the age of 13 at Sick Kids, really, to me, captures the essence of the hospital. And at the end of the day, the legacy that we've created by renaming the hospital and through the gift is that the promise to everyone that comes in there is that no matter where you're from, no matter who you are, no matter what your illness is, we're going to do everything we can to make you better.
Well, you have to remember that there's a hospital in Saskatchewan that actually matched the 50 million. I know you were quickly talking to me prior to the interview. You want to briefly just fill us into that?
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, one of the things that we always said was that, we're hoping that not only would the gift inspire others to give to the hospital, but that it would inspire other philanthropists across the country. I mean, the reality is there's a lot of money out there. Sometimes it's hard to find, but there is a lot of wealth. And, to see other hospitals benefit from the momentum that the Guerin gift made, I think is tremendous for everybody. And so I was thrilled to read just over a week ago that Jimmy Patterson, a very successful Canadian entrepreneur, one of the greatest of all time, had dedicated $50 million to a community hospital in his native province of Saskatchewan. And I think, that kind of leadership is demanded. That kind of leadership is going to inspire others to give. Maybe not 50 million, but something, because I think we all have it, or most of us do. We all have the ability to give, and I think it's an important thing to do and start at a young age. And hopefully, if we're as successful or half as successful as someone like Jimmy Patterson, that someday many of us will be able to write even more meaningful checks to great hospitals and institutions across the country.
As we focus back on the Invictus Games Toronto, I want you to share, what does this game say to you?
I think for me, these are games that are going to enable the country and every citizen to do something that has never been done before, and on a size and a scale that we haven't undertaken in this country. And at the end of the day, all of the research, all of the work that we've done, all of the interactions we've had with hundreds of thousands of Canadians over the last couple of years, there is such an appetite and such a reservoir of empathy that Canadians have for our military families, that games like this allow us to unlock that empathy that Canadians have and turn it into really meaningful action. Whether that's making a donation, whether that's buying tickets and coming to the games and cheering on the competitors, whether that's doing something in the local community, whether that's inspiring corporate Canada to do more to hire veterans, to give them meaningful employment after their service, or a dozen other things. These games are going to capture the imagination, the spirit of Canadians in a way that I don't think any other games or event we've ever hosted in 150 years will. And it's, I often hear from Canadians, and certainly I've experienced it, that once you're with a competitor, when you've had time to spend like I have with military families, you realize how humble they are, how thankful they are when you're doing something for them, to thank them. But more than anything, you really understand, especially when you're around those who have served your country, often in places that many people have never visited or know of, that have come back who are physically or mentally injured, how lucky we are that they have paid, in some cases, the ultimate sacrifice for you and I and many others to appreciate the freedoms that we have today. And it's easy to take that for granted. And I think these games will be a wonderful reminder of the modern day contributions that our military continue to make on our behalf today, as well as what our military families have sacrificed for us for 150 years. So I'm excited. I know most Canadians won't be able to be here in Toronto to see it, but it will be widely covered across this country and around the world. And I think it's going to be one of those moments that Canadians reflect. And when we think about Canada's greatness, one of the first things that comes to my mind are the men and women in uniform, our veterans and the families, and what they have contributed to make Canada the country it is today.
I want to thank you, Michael, for your time.
Well, it's a pleasure, and anytime you'd like to come back and visit us, we'd love to have you, and hopefully you'll be here to cover some of the great stories of the competitors and their families and friends here in Toronto this September.